Welcome to More Than a Conversation, the podcast where we meet and have discussions with some of the most interesting people and innovative leaders in their fields from all walks of life. We will be discussing everything from politics to theology to religion to philosophy to life. Every once in a while, I may just be on here talking about whatever's in the news and whatever I think will be of interest to you. This is your host, Patrick Connolly, and I hope that today will be more than a conversation for you. Welcome to More Than a Conversation. This is your host, Patrick Connolly, and today I am joined by Todd Sloggett of Holiness Missions to America, The Saving Place, and whatever else he's got going on. He may be one of the busiest people that you've ever had the opportunity to listen to. He's got stuff going on everywhere. I'm going to call you Pastor Todd because you're pastoring a bunch of people, although your official title might not be that, but you're definitely pastoring part of your city. Pastor Todd, good to have you on today.
Very glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I know right now you guys have had a lot going on out your way, and we're going to talk about some of the ministries that you have happening, but I know recently you had a storm come through that affected some of your properties. What properties was it that affected? What did you have going on in those properties, and how's the rebuilding going?
Thank you for asking. We actually had a Cat 1 tornado hit our headquarters dead on. It's where our general offices is that runs the connections to all of our different ministries around the United States and some of our ministries around the world. We actually have multiple buildings on the same property. And the main building houses a retail center where we have a furniture company that we use to generate income for our ministries, plus all of our headquarters, plus our conferences, conference rooms, and our ministry center, warehouses, warehousing furniture that we sell, also warehousing donation items that we generate to give out. It's just a big piece of property, a lot going on. Got hit about 12:30 at night, completely destroyed one building, 100% loss in our warehousing building, about 50% loss. They say in the main building, lost roofs, windows, holes in walls. It's been a big process. It was about probably 12 weeks ago now, maybe, and still all day, every day, we're in the rebuilding process. We had to negotiate about a $400,000 bill with our insurance. And really just in the last week and a half, we started really making progress, getting roofs on, glass replaced, paint back on the buildings. Just day before yesterday, the warehouse center started going back up. You can see some of the framework coming together. So the Lord's helped us, but it's been a big trial.
I'm sure, especially with all that you have going on, you're so busy, and then something like that just come up, and now you got to deal with that. But while you're dealing with that, ministry can't stop. So I know that has been quite a challenge. You guys actually just also came out of a conference, correct?
Yes. HMA puts on an annual conference retreat. We try to bring all of our ministers in America together as best we can. At least once a year, we invite other people to come. This one was at a special retreat center outside of Tulsa, and it was amazing. This is our 7th year. Seems like every year it just gets better and better. Myself and Pastor David Lamb did some extra teaching this year. We had some more downtime and fellowship time and relax time for the ministries than normal, and it worked out amazing.
What inspired you to put together a conference like this? I know that in across denominational lines, most of our classical Pentecostal movements have revivals, camp meetings, all those. We have a lot of things where we get together. What's different about this model that you're doing?
The first part of your question there is what inspired me to do it, and what inspired me to do it. The answer to that is the second part of your question that you asked, where you talked about how we traditionally do lots of camp meetings, lots of revivals, lots of elongated series of services, and those have their place. They're very needful. Lots of people that I know have got saved in them, got helped in them, got blessed in them, been filled with the Spirit in them. and been healed in them, all kinds of things. But the ministers that I work with are boots on the ground, day and night. They're never off the clock. They're working with drug dealers and pimps and prostitutes and drug addicts and homeless people and divorces and abortions and suicides. And it's a very, very heavy lift. And you got to stay plugged into Christ all the time. And we're spread out all across North America. And I got guys in Georgia learning things that guys in North Carolina don't know yet. And I got guys in Oklahoma dealing with things that guys in Ohio are eventually going to deal with. And we felt like we needed to get together for camaraderie and to sharpen each other. And the first time we did it, we talked about it and said, you know what, we can all go to 10 camp meetings anywhere we want to, but we can't sit down and have a conversation. We can't sit down and teach each other things. We can't sit down, that environment doesn't exist for us. So we did what HMA always does. We find a problem and create a solution. We made that environment.
I just had a conversation a few weeks ago with Pastor Bruce Deal. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Pastor Deal, but he is City of Refuge there in Atlanta.
Yes.
Doing incredible things. And one of the things I told him in that conversation was what he's doing the special forces work. What a lot of us are doing now, and I'll be the first to admit that where I am, our church, we're doing some incredible things in outreach and so on and so forth. But that is not the core of our identity like it is for some ministries. That is something we do. We might be doing, maybe we're doing some Marines work, but we're not doing the special forces work. And you guys are really out there doing something that is absolutely unique. It's absolutely needed. It's church and Christianity in a way that the majority of people don't even recognize church and Christianity, because for so many people, Christianity and their relationship with God, their relationship with the church, is defined by meetings, events, being at that special service once a week or whatever it is that they're doing. But it's so often we're not seeing, we don't see people engaging in the way you do. So that's a unique thing. So I asked him this question, and I'll ask you. You probably, maybe you woke up one day and said, at 8 years old, this is what I want to do. But I'm imagining that your path didn't start that way. I'm pretty sure you probably didn't look up from a Tonka truck and go, I can't wait to deal with heroin addicts all day long. That's what I want to do. When all the other kids said, I want to be a policeman or a firefighter, you were like, I want to be out there dealing with this. So what is it? Tell me your story. You didn't just wake up doing this one day. So let's go back to the, I was born a pauper to a pawn. Where does Todd Sloggett start?
Yeah, I was born and raised in the West, which is, there's just not a lot of Pentecostal ministers that I've ever heard be able to say that. I was born in Idaho, raised in Idaho, Oregon, and California. But really what happened at an early age, we were a very dysfunctional family, came from very broken, disgruntled people. Mom left us when us three boys, I had an older brother and a younger brother. My mom left about Christmas time when I was 6, and my brothers were 8 and 2. Everything was downhill, seemed like after that. Extremely, extremely poor. I don't hardly know anybody or run with anybody that realizes just how poor we were back then. And then I kind of set my own course and broke from society. I ran away from home when I was 10. I've basically been on my own since I was 10 years old.
Wow.
So every decision I've made, I've had to make alone since 10. And I ended up homeless in California, in the San Francisco Bay Area, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, running with gangs, got addicted to drugs when I was 15, addicted to cocaine. Was a cocaine addict and alcoholic from 15 to 25. So had no church background, wasn't taught anything, never got the little Sunday school Bible, never went to Sunday school. But the Lord delivered me on a Sunday morning, absolutely miraculously. I went to a little country church in Wilder, Idaho. quote unquote by mistake, and God saved me. I was drunk and high when I went to church. I was completely sane and sober and saved when I left the church.
Amen.
And I joined that church immediately and attached myself to those people. My wife was my first convert, and led her to the Lord in bed at night one night, a few months after I got saved. Went directly into the ministry, no formal education, barely had a high school diploma, faked a lot to get that, and really had nothing, and I was in the ministry. But my intention was, the reason I went in the ministry was because I had this epiphany at salvation that everybody I know is a liar, a drug addict, an alcoholic, a thief, a criminal, a gang member. Everybody I know. That's the only people I had in my life for 15 years. And I just found a way to something that completely miraculously and instantaneously changed all that. I'm not a drug addict. I'm not a liar. I'm not a thief. I'm not an alcoholic overnight. And so I felt this unbelievable urge to get what I had, figure it out, and get it back to everybody I knew. My whole thought every day was, man, everybody that I know needs this. And so I very gullibly set out to join every outreach, every ministry, every para-ministry, everything that our churches had going on that would help people like me, that would reach people like me, that was going after people like me, that would find people like me. And to my shock and brokenheartedness, I found out that there was no such ministries. I've said it lots of times over the years. You know, I felt like my getting saved at that group, that church, those ministries, I felt like that was an accident for them. They weren't looking for a guy like me. They weren't reaching for a guy like me. They didn't necessarily want a guy like me. But when they got me, I thought they did it on purpose. And so I wanted to be a part of that purpose, and come to find out that purpose didn't exist. So
Wow.
spent the next 12 years with my family, me and my wife and my 4 children, developing and creating those purposes. And when we started HMA Ministries, that's all we've ever done is find groups of people with tremendous needs, broken by sin, unreached by the modern American church, and create booklets and programs and boots on the ground services, and make all the mistakes and figure it out. And then when the Lord starts helping us and it starts working, then we start sharing it with everybody else.
So this church, you come into church, you're thinking, man, I've been saved, and you guys set a spiritual trap for me. You've been fishing for me, and now you got me. And I'm so excited to get here, you know. And I think for a lot of us, hearing you say that probably, hopefully, opens our eyes to what someone says when they're coming into the church from a completely unchurched background. You know, we do have people now. I'm in the Southeast, so I have a large portion of people who they understand what church is. They understand a lot of things before they ever show up. So for them, it's just adapting. A lot of them have already made the decisions in their lives sometimes before they even get there. All right, I want to need to adapt this and this and that. They might have been raised in church or whatever. But there are a portion of people, and now that number is growing, that have no encounter with church or with God or any of those things. And so I think sometimes we miss out on it. And maybe we can get a little jaded, and seeing people in their ups and downs of conversion and so on and so forth, that we miss that. We miss the fact that they're so excited to get there. And they're thinking,
Sure.
Man, the church existed for me to be free. Now, you mentioned something. You mentioned overnight freedom. Just overnight, life changed for you. Now, at the point that you got saved, were you involved in any addiction at that point? Were you a substance abuse addiction?
I was drunk and high when I went to church that morning.
That's what I thought you said. You went in drunk and high and came out sober. And so if you're addicted, but you instantly found freedom. Now, when you say that, I have people that have had the same experience. A lot of people, some folks don't have that experience, though, it seems. When we have someone that comes in, I think obviously we have the miraculous hey, man, you're free. But what do you think separates, or where do you think the difference comes down on the individual? And maybe it's an individual listening to this podcast right now who you've showed up at church, but you had an addiction, a habit, a hang up. It doesn't necessarily have to be a substance addiction, but substance is a huge thing in our world, legal or illegal. You've got this issue, and you've come and you've given your heart to God, but now you're still struggling. So, what do you say to that, Pastor Todd, when we're dealing with someone or someone's dealing with that in themselves, that they go, man, I hear this story of this miraculous conversion, but and this miraculous freedom, but I'm not quite feeling that. What do you say to them? What do you say to us when we're dealing with people who are in that situation?
First of all, we have to be very careful and not begin to believe that because we understand religion or our little box of religion that we can play God for somebody else. Everybody's a free moral agent. Everybody has a direct relationship with Christ, or the ability to have a direct relationship with Christ. And, even all the religious boxes, pick anything, Presbyterian, Nazarene, Baptist, Mormon, Catholic, Holiness, whatever. We all kind of get a certain group of things figured out and then attempt to apply them to other people. It's a huge mistake of all religion. And, I've learned over time, I would never say that everybody has to fit in one of these scenarios I'm about to describe, but I'll describe it just so people can understand that it does make sense the way God deals with people differently. For example, on our altars in Tulsa, we've had, I would have to guess, maybe 25, 30, 35,000 people have prayed on those altars in the last 12 or 13 years. We started in downtown Tulsa. That was our original work. We have 54 ministries in 7 states and 5 countries right now. And so we've seen a ton of people come through, and we don't just, see if this one fits this box, and if they don't, we move on and try to find one that does. We deal with every individual case. We even write books about some of the cases or programs about some of the cases. So this is something we learned in the very beginning. It's not perfect, but it works a lot of the time. If you get a young person, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old young man, let's say, and they're hooked on meth, and they were going down the wrong road for a long time, made some terrible decisions, got rebellious, drank with their buddies, took some drugs, liked it, thought they weren't addicted by the time they were, come to church either with a religious background or not, but come to the Lord that first time. Very, very often you will see, those will be the ones you'll see. Just like what happened to me, 25 years old, never been to church before. Those are the ones that just get the total clean break most of the time. God says, you know what? I'll save you. I'll heal you. I'll fix you. I'll clean you up. You're not going to have to be sick. You're not going to have withdrawals. You're not going to throw up. This is a miracle. You can praise me for this. This is how good I am. This is how powerful I am. But if you watch, and again, I'm not saying across the board. I know somebody's going to hear this and say, well, that's not what happened to me. That's fine. But most of the time, this is what I see after tens of thousands of times. You get that guy or that woman, and they were on drugs from 14 to 16, and their family got them off, and then they went back on at 18, and they were on drugs for several years, and then they went to church somewhere, and God got them off, and then they got back on within 6 or 7 months, and they have a lifestyle of these addictions, and maybe they change addictions. And then you start working with them. They're 29, 35, 42, and they've been in and out and back and forth. They can tell you to your face, I've been to 7 rehabs and, all this stuff. My people know these stories
Sure.
like the back of their hand. And those are the ones that seem to struggle, but we've been able to teach them how to not struggle so much. We teach them, hey, listen, what if this is what's going on? What if God says, okay, you came to me the first time, I completely healed you, bam. You came back, you messed up, and you came back another time, and I pretty well took care of that. You had to struggle with it a little bit, but nowhere near as much as you should have. Now, this is your 6th or 7th time back. And it appears to me a lot of times that God says, you know what? I'm going to save you because I'm God, because I'm a savior, because I said I would, because I made a promise and I don't lie. I will save you. But it's going to be a lot more difficult this time to get off of that stuff. The struggles are going to continue. The battles are going to be harder. Almost as if God is saying, don't ask me to get it for free when I gave it to you for free and you just blew your nose on it and walked away. You wiped your feet on my miracles the last 4 times. Obviously, that's not going to work for you. You've proven that. So let's try something that might work for you. Maybe if you have to scratch and claw and bawl and cry and vomit for the next 8 weeks, that the next time you think about taking one of those pills again, you'll remember how hard this was and you'll respect it more. God's dealing with all these people the way he deems worthy, he deems necessary to deal with all these people. It's really not for us to question it as much as it is sometimes for us to figure it out.
And so that individual that's dealing with that, there's a third individual, and this is a difficult one. And but as from what I know of you, you're not afraid of controversy. Not that you seek it, but you're not afraid to just speak the truth into it. There is a group of people that exist that are church attending parents, grandparents, deacons, Sunday school teachers, musicians, church folk, okay, who are probably, they would tell you that they're saved. I wouldn't question their salvation. In every area of their life, they exhibit many fruits of Christianity. But we have a dirty little secret in the church world across, even in the holiness movements, from the independent holiness through the Church of Gods and I'm sure it's elsewhere, so I'm not just pointing at us, of addicted Christians. And when I say that, instantly that sounds, if somebody's going to say, well, that's an oxymoron, that can't exist, so on and so forth. But I'm talking about people that exhibit fruits of Christianity in seemingly every area of their life, but they have substance abuse problems. I've run it now. They're not going and getting heroin. They're not getting a fentanyl fix on the street. You know that. I know that.
Right.
They're not drinking a shot every night. They're not an alcoholic. But we have people that cannot rest without whatever it is that they're taking, whatever their substance is. We have people. I had one family I was working with, Christians for 30, grandparents. And I mean, there became a point where this guy, he would exhibit some behavior every once in a while. And my wife says, what do you think his deal is? Of course, I know because I've been there. I said, he's out of pills. And she said, what? I said, he's out of pills. Well, sure enough, I lost my pills. Well, it became a thing where he's losing his pills. What it was is he was overusing every month or two, or at the end of every month, he's running out 8 days early, and the government starts cracking down on. And so we know we have an opioid epidemic. We know we have that, but we're not talking about it with people in the church. And addiction has changed clothes, and we've dressed it up, and we've taken it from the paper packet to the twist or to the orange bottle, or whatever it is. And I'm not trying to be the crazy guy, but we got people that would never take a shot to go to sleep, but they can't rest without NyQuil every night that they take 3 and 4 doses of. What do we do about that? Is that a real problem? Am I imagining it? What are your thoughts on that?
You just opened a can of worms I could talk about for about 6 weeks, but I was going to say I could write a book about it, but I did. You said addicted Christians is an oxymoron, or you said somebody would say that. Well, cheating Christians is an oxymoron. Lying Christians is an oxymoron. Prophesying devils is an oxymoron, but we have them in the Bible. Right. We have David and Saul, and we got all these records that if it's in the Bible, we can kind of put it out there, and it's this cool little fantasy world or whatever, but it doesn't apply to us because we've made different religious rules since then that we're going to abide by.
Right.
There are addicted Christians. I counsel. I'm a Christian counselor. I've counseled thousands of people, and not bragging because it's a horrible thing, but I've counseled a lot of ministers trying to get off of substances. I know what happens. I know it's huge. We run all of our own studies. We partner with the state of Ohio, the state of Oklahoma, the state of Texas. We do all kinds of studies all the time. We've partnered in the past with the Focus on the Family to do studies. I would guess that 55 to 60% of your faithful Sunday morning Christians are on a substance they don't need to be on. Now that's a huge thing to say, but
That's a big number. That's a big number.
That's where my studies take me, and I'm just saying, that's I can't just sit you down and count them out and prove it to you, but I would say that's probably a very close number. You're talking to somebody that knows, and here's something maybe people would never want to admit, but these things need to be talked about, and I'm glad you're bringing them up. I was on alcohol and cocaine for 10 years as a lost person, a completely unchurched person. I got saved and had 2 brain diseases and got diagnosed with some chemical imbalances, and they got me all jacked up on the wrong chemicals, and I got addicted to Ritalin. And at one point, I finally realized I was addicted to Ritalin, and I wasn't about to do anything about it. You can probably hear a train in the background right now, by the way. I'm right by the railroad tracks. Hold on just a second. This could get really loud. My office on the wrong side of the tracks, exactly where we belong.
Yeah, that's all the Pentecostal churches. You go across the country, there's a theme. They're all close to railroad tracks.
That's right.
We couldn't get property anywhere else. Well, now we've moved uptown, though. Watch out. We've actually, our parking lot here, our church is on the same site that it was on for the last 100 years. And at the edge of our parking lot is the train track.
Yeah. We hear them 12, 13 times a day. So I went from being a 10-year cocaine and alcohol addict. I got saved. I know I was saved. I was in the ministry. Anybody can argue with this if they want to. I'm just going to give you the facts from my perspective. I had 2 brain diseases. I was chemically imbalanced, clinically treated, got me messed up on Ritalin. I became addicted to it. I continued for several months to find ways to stay up on Ritalin after I knew that I had a problem. The Lord dealt with me about that. I fought it. I found ways to break free from that, and I did. I don't know if I've ever fully told this story like this before, but here we go. And so I had that battle early in my ministry. I felt like God finally gave me deliverance after I fought through and showed him I was willing to try to get broke free from those things that I'd been prescribed. Went years with no problems, and thought all the thoughts about are we addicted to caffeine, sugar, fat content, all these different things, just trying to reason all of this out. Ended up doing so much ministry. Again, 54 ministries, 17 states, 5 countries. You can only imagine the stress and the strain trying to produce a couple $1 million a year to keep all of these functions open, and anti-abortion pregnancy services, clinics, and teenage runaway rescue and return centers, and battered women and children homes, and all this stuff going on. And so started watching the younger generation back several years ago. I was hardcore against Monster drinks and all these things because I could see the problems coming. And I started using the 5-hour energy, those little shots, and because my doctor said that that's the most natural way to get energy. Well, I would drink one once in a while, and I come to the point after a very, very long period of time that I got to rationalizing and thinking about that. And man, I was drinking those things, 1 or 2, 3, almost every day. And so I would just say to myself, well, I don't need those. And I put them down, forget about it. And then end up couldn't. And then all of a sudden they come to me again. Man, you're all the way back here again. Now, most people are going to say, okay, Brother Todd, you're way off the deep end. Now you went from cocaine to Ritalin to 5-hour energy. And I got 5-hour energies in this drawer over here. I mean, I could take one this evening or drink one this evening if I thought I needed to, or it would be helpful or whatever. I'm not saying that, but it's not part of me anymore. So it's very, very easy for people to start pointing out what you can be addicted to and what you're not addicted to. I know some people, they can't go to bed without pulling out their phone and watching 2 or 3 hours worth of videos on YouTube or something. That's their thing. They couldn't go to sleep if they didn't do it. But you get back to the opioid addiction stuff. 4 days ago, the state of Oklahoma, where I'm sitting right now, won a lawsuit against Johnson & Johnson. And they were sued for
Wow.
$7.5 million, and the state awarded them 543. They were sued for $7.5 billion, and the state awarded them $543 million. That is the first lawsuit ever against a pharmaceutical company that accused them of spreading the opioid addiction and
Wow.
won. All of a sudden, there's 214 more cases against them now. So people that are addicted to these things, whether you got it from a doctor or not, whether you're doing it legally or not, whether you're, whatever, you better be careful, because the tide is changing. We have turned the tide. I made the statement at our conference that in America, we've turned the tide. Finally, it's okay to be against abortions. We've turned that tide. In Pentecostal ranks, it's finally okay to show up to church with a beard on. We've turned that tide. All these different things that were considered quote unquote staples of tradition 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, they're turning. And I made the statement 4 mornings ago when this happened, where Johnson & Johnson got sued by the state of Oklahoma and lost, that we are going to see in our lifetime an attack against everybody that was propping up the opioid crisis.
Mm. Yeah, and that and a long time coming. The sad thing is when it's addiction is like whack-a-mole. We knock down one substance and something else is going to pop its head up. I've often thought that the pharmaceutical industry obviously had culpability in what was happening. There were substances, and you could do the research on them, but there were companies that were trying to develop substances that would be non-addictive and so on and so forth. And it was interesting that a lot of those things were getting shot down and not developed. And well, there's a reason for that. If I'm selling something, I want you to need it. I want you to want it. But that being said, I think for a lot of people that are in the church, and if you're out there and you're listening to this, and you're listening, and you go, well, I'm not really addicted. I can explain to you that, well, I've actually got this pain. Listen, the moment that you take it for that feeling, that little feeling of euphoria that you get, that good, warm feeling in your gut, yeah, then you're addicted. When that's the feeling you're chasing, and look, and see, that's the thing. And of course, Pastor Todd, that you kind of have that advantage, and you've got the advantage I do, where we get to look at people and go, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Right. You're not pulling the wool here. And that's the thing. When you start chasing that feeling, when you start chasing that warmth, you start chasing that slide into euphoria is the word for it. You start chasing that, and you're not just on schedule to knock that pain down. Well, listen, I understand that you've got pain. I understand that the doctor said to take it, but now you're getting into a problem. It's time to seek help. It's time to seek help from God. It's time to seek help from hopefully a medical professional that can help you and get you on a regimen that can help with pain, but not put you in that place. But there's another thing too, and hey, I'm glad I have this opportunity to throw this off of you. I get asked a lot, about addiction, drugs, substances, everything from whether it be medication for anxieties, all the way through essential oils. I get asked all these questions. And hey, More Than a Conversation listeners, I hope that you are enjoying this conversation as much as I am, and I hope that you're getting something great out of it today. I'm just wanting to jump in here in the middle to take a moment and let you know a few ways that you can help out More Than a Conversation. First, wherever you're listening, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. That will definitely help, and that'll make sure that you get all the content. Also, if you have a way to rate, if your app allows you to give a 4-star, 5-star, whatever the rating is that's the top rating, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and drop a rating there. That's how the aggregators and the distributors rank podcasts, and the higher the ranking you give, the more ears will be able to hear these great conversations. Thanks again, and I'm hoping that today has been more than a conversation for you. Now let's get back to it. Kind of the way that, you go back to the New Testament. The New Testament talks about witchcraft. We all know that word witchcraft coming from the same root for pharmacy, pharmaceutical. So we understand that there's this idea of mind-altering substances that was involved in worship at one time. Also, all of us who've ever been involved in drug use, particularly any psychotropics or anything like that, we understand there's a very spiritual connotation to drugs. We understand the gateways that are opened in your mind and in your spirit and so on and so forth. If you've ever been involved in any of that, you for sure know what I'm talking about. But so we get that witchcraft is tied to it. Someone said, well, when is this stuff sinful and when it is not? And when is it not? And this is the best way I know how to describe it. If I have a physical problem, and you come to me and you say, this pill, this lotion, this oil, this whatever, if you apply it to that, you know, I've got a problem with tightness in my shoulders or whatever. Okay, you take this, you apply this, you touch that, you do whatever, and that physically is going to have a reaction in your body that's going to do such and such, and that's going to make the muscles do this, or this particular smell is going to open up something in your olfactories that's going to affect this headache or whatever. And if you can give me a physical explanation to a physical thing, okay, maybe we're dealing with medicine, but I'm physically doing something. But when I can't rest, or I've got this thing because I'm spiritually not where I need to be, because I'm dealing with guilt or shame or torment or whatever, and then I say, well, if I have this oil, this pill, this thing, it's going to help me rest despite my spiritual turmoil. Or I've got unforgiveness I've held on to forever. And because I've held on to that, now I've got this anxiety or whatever. And so I'm going to take this thing to help deal with that. Well, now you're using a physical substance to deal with a spiritual problem. If you're using a physical thing to deal with physical things, I think we can call that medicine. But if you're using physical things to deal with spiritual problems, well, that becomes witchcraft and superstition. You know, if I'm not going to hang a dream catcher in my kid's room to try to stop the devil from coming in while they're asleep. That's witchcraft. I'm not doing that. They don't need that. Now, if they've got something that looks like that for whatever decoration or whatever, that's somebody's choice to make. But I'm not going to put a statue in my home to say it's going to change the vibe in my house. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have an oil that I say is going to do something spiritually. When you start trying to change auras, spiritual stuff, you're dealing with something totally different. Or when you start taking a physical substance to cover up a spiritual problem, now again, I think you're dealing with something totally different. That's kind of my take on it. What do you think about that?
I love it. I think this is the greatest conversation I've had in weeks.
Hopefully it's more than a conversation. A little plug for the title there, right?
Well, you know, this is the reason I'm so excited. This is the kind of stuff we do. I mean, we deal with depression, anxiety, addiction, pills, homosexuality, rape, all these things. And we develop programs, we write books, we go back to the scriptures, and we try to end up with something to give everybody that has any particular need that isn't being answered anywhere else. I have a DVD series online about dealing with addicts. We have a book called A Quick Guide to Dealing with Addicted Loved Ones. We have a DVD called Dealing with Addicts. We have a Spreaker radio show where we put out how to deal with addiction, how to deal things with marriage, how to deal with depression. A lot of what you're talking about is in a sermon series I have called The Spirit of Depression. The Spirit of Depression is online, specifically on our Spreaker page, but it's on other places. I would start with this statement. The majority of everyone that's addicted in the United States of America, the majority of addicts in the United States of America are addicted to depression and anxiety pills. According to Christian medical studies, the FDA has never been able to agree or disagree, of course, but according to Christian medical studies, it's very, very likely that all heroin addicts, all meth addicts, all alcoholics, every kind of addict there is out there, pornography addict, gambling addict, all together do not make up as much as we have people that are addicted to depression and anxiety meds.
Wow.
The majority of all Christians or churchgoers, either way you want to put it, that are addicted to something are addicted to depression and anxiety meds. I would say probably 90% would be a good number to start with. It may bump here or there a little bit, but most all church going addicts, their addiction, if they're addicted to something, is going to be depression, anxiety meds. One of the reasons for that, and I'm going to throw myself way under a fast moving bus right here, but the go-to diagnoses for most doctors anymore, because doctors will see 40 patients a day and 36 of them will be for depression. I have 3 personal friends that are all doctors, talk to them almost every week. Every one of them say the same thing. 75, 80% of their patients are depression patients.
Wow.
And they're not schooled to deal with those patients. And so most of those patients end up on anxiety and depression meds. And in that sermon lesson, The Spirit of Depression, I list most of the major ones that we're having problems with. And what happens is they have, when a doctor you come to a doctor with a problem, his job is to diagnose you. That's his job. Most people would think, well, his job is to treat me, or his job is to fix me. No, his job is to diagnose you and then help you decide how to take a treatment plan, where to go from there, who to send you to, what to take, when to come back. So his job is to diagnose you. It's very hard to diagnose somebody with something that you can't prove. But most depression patients get diagnosed with bipolar. And bipolar is it's great as your go-to bullet of choice because you can't prove it. You can only guess it. So if you show up with certain symptoms, and the symptoms would be what they call rage or extreme rage and depressions or lows. Rage not meaning like anger and stuff, but like a high and a just overwhelming feeling of strength and energy and all of that. And then so extreme highs and extreme lows in your life, and now you're battling with the lows. Nobody ever comes up and says, you know what, I'm too happy, I got too much energy, can you help me out here? Nobody's ever going to show up for treatment for the rages. They always show up for treatment for the depressions.
Right.
So if you have those symptoms, 99 times out of 100, they're going to diagnose you as bipolar, and they're going to treat you with these anxiety and depression meds, lithium and Wellbutrin and all this other stuff we could list. I have a huge problem with that as a minister. I have a huge problem with that as a Christian. And that is the fact that I could name you 1,000 things off the top of my head that have the exact same criteria as being diagnosed with bipolar, and they're not bipolar. They're immorality. They're bad choices. They're all of these things that medicine will never fix. If you steal something, you get that initial high, that quick joy of you got away with this and you got something for free, and then your conscience begins to work on you and you get this extreme low and this anxiety and you wonder if you're going to get caught. That's not bipolar. That's theft. If you cheat on your spouse, you get this high of this activity that you did, that you got away with, this amazing feeling that you got. And then from that point on, it's guilt and anxiety and eventually depression and fear of getting caught. That's not bipolar. That's adultery. Mm-hmm. So lots and lots and lots of people are getting medication for being called bipolar, and medication can't cover up sin. So, there's so many things.
There you go. Spiritual problem, physical answer. That it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Another problem I have with it, Brother Conley, is, and I know we've all probably been around some saint that I've never taken an aspirin in my life and I don't believe in going to the hospital. That's fine if that's your thing. And I've seen God bless a lot of people with things like that. But there's something to trusting God. There is something to having faith in God. And the more medication and things that we can take to dull down our pains and our problems, the less we need God, the less we'll seek God, the less faith we'll have in God, and the less healings we'll see. The church world needs miracles. Some of our miracles aren't coming is because we found a leaf or a pill or an oil or something or a drink to get us by. So God can't get us past it because we're willing to just get along with it.
Yeah, and ultimately we're depending on things other than God, and that is for the believer. What's the entire Bible? The entire Bible. I say this all the time, from the do's and don'ts to Abraham's righteousness to Noah's obedience, all the way through the Scripture. The entire story is God saying, "Take me at my word. That don't touch that tree. Don't eat that, or don't eat that fruit. Just take me at my word." We don't. That's sin. Believe in Jesus. Take me at my word. God's just saying, just take me at my word, and just believe in me. And what we're doing is we are so often not taking him at his word and not recognizing. You talk about the highs and lows. Well, I imagine a pretty high day is the promise that your seed is going to be innumerable. I would say a pretty low day is the day that you're supposed to take your son to the top of the mountain and sacrifice him. Yet that was just life for Abraham.
Right.
It was just life. A pretty high day is, behold the Lamb of God. There he is. There's my cousin, Jesus. He's the one. A pretty low day is you're in prison and you're about to die, and hey, go ask him, is he really the one? But that's just life for John the Baptist. And a lot of what we're doing, and you're touching on something, is we're just trying to escape life. We're just trying to escape, and we're dulling down those moments where we're. So now I don't need faith because I'm just not feeling the fear. So I don't need the faith to overcome. I don't need to rely on God. Rather than rely on God, I'll just dull the feeling. I had a man one time in a church I worked in, great man, good man of God, Christian man, good family, all those things. And I talked about it. And I've always been very open in preaching about addiction and so on and so forth, because it's something that's close to my heart. I believe it's very important. And I talked about the anxiety medications and so on and so forth. And I believe, again, there are people that have a real chemical imbalance, they have a real chemical issue. That's a different story. That's like treating your pancreas or or insulin treatments or whatever. Yeah, there's things where the brain is an organ and needs some medicine. But there's also the time where you're just trying to dull something. And this man came to me, he said, here's the thing. He said, I was on that medication. He goes, but I got to where I felt like I couldn't encounter God. So what do you mean? He said, I couldn't have the spiritual encounters. He said, because just everything was dull. Yeah. Everything was dull. Well, you're closing or diverting a spiritual door. We have to remember spirit, soul, body. God created us with that soulish part of us, those emotions, not for them to be ignored, but really, and this is a whole nother conversation, but you could say that the emotions, that emotional area, that soulishness that makes us people, that area is the area through which we communicate between the spirit and the physical. And if that soul, we're telling our soul, be quiet, sit down, because we don't want to deal with your feelings. We don't want to deal with your emotion. When what we should be saying is, I'm giving this to God. Sure. But yeah, that dullness, man, that affects a lot of people. I guess the question now is, what advice do we offer people who are in the situation where they're either feeling those ups or downs, or maybe they've got a doctor suggesting something to them? What advice do we give to the Christian in that area? And neither one of us is a doctor, and so we don't want to get shut down for practicing medicine without a license. But how do we tell the difference between legitimacy and, hey, I really need something, which are some people, and I don't want to shame anybody that really has a real need. Right. But how do we know the difference between the two?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. Once again, I go back to the same statement. I'm not going to play God. I don't want anybody else to play God. What we do is we give them the right definitions. We give them the right facts and the right range of truths, so that they have the right tools in their tool belt and the right bullets in their gun to work and to build and to fight back with, rather than everybody trying to tell everybody this is the way to do it. You touched on something a minute ago. People need to understand that society and church seems to be following society far more these days than society follows church, which is a huge mistake. We all understand something has to be done. But this modern era that we live in is starting to redefine certain words that cause us to put that on our whole being and our whole, people are talking about what's normal and what's fair. When I'm doing all these counseling sessions for people that are depressed and people that have anxiety and people going through divorces and people going through split churches, and I keep hearing normal, fair, normal, several other words, but I don't want to get it off into them and just deal with those two for a minute. First of all, fair. I had a young couple sitting here the other day, and they said that they didn't think that the way God was treating them was fair. And so the brother asked me, he said, "Isn't God fair?" I said, "I have no idea. I don't. I know he's right. I know he's righteous. I know he's holy. I know a lot of things about God, but I don't know if he's fair." Because, fair to who? Your version of fair, my version of fair, his version of fair, her version of fair are all going to be different. Which one is God's version?
He is just. He might be, but that doesn't mean that it's going to feel fair. For sure.
Yeah, and we just it's too fair fluctuates too much. All I can tell people is if he does it, it's right. If he does it, it's just. But I don't know if it's fair. Fair has nothing to do with this really, because there's a lot of people we can go back to in the Bible and look at, how was Job's life fair? But, God was very righteous in coming through and very just and very holy in the outcome. But, the other thing, because of what you're talking about, normal is the thing I keep heering.
Let me say this about fair, too. I'm glad he's not fair because the cross isn't fair.
That's right. I've made that statement many times. I'm glad he's not fair, because if he was fair, I'd be in hell right now.
Absolutely.
So normal's the other one I keep hearing dealt with. If you talk to a doctor and he's trying to dumb it down for you because we don't know the big fancy words and we don't have the education that he has, and he's trying to tell you about, let's say, a drug like lithium, very commonly used chemical for anxiety and depression, what he's going to tell you is there is a certain range of feelings, that are normal. And you seem to be peaking out of that range too high or peaking out of that range too low, or both. And lithium is a natural salt. It's not a man-made chemical. It's a natural salt found in the earth. But something about lithium salt, when you put it into your system, it does something to your brain, to your neuro system. And what it does is it cuts the highs out and the lows out. It kind of pushes you towards normal. And most people dealing with lithium have a huge problem when they get on it, and that is the fact that they're at least used to having some escapism when they get those highs every once in a while. But they came to the doctor to get treated for the lows. But when the doctor gives them lithium, he takes the lows out and the highs out, and now they're upset because they don't have the escape of the highs anymore.
I don't have that energy anymore. Yeah, they still want that part. Yeah.
So the doctor's trying to chemically induce his version of normal into your brain it just seems like some really, really dangerous places to go.
Wow. And so when that happens, that becomes a decision that, if you're out there and you're dealing with that, make it prayerfully, make it in all sincerity. And at the end of the day, as has already been alluded to by Pastor Sloggett, and that is, there's nothing wrong with trusting God. There's nothing wrong with trying to do that. That being said, again, our goal isn't to shame anybody, but at the end of the day, there are people, and I've seen it so many times. In fact, one of the areas that I've seen happen at every venue that I've been involved in ministry has been people being delivered from bondage to those things, to those types of medications.
Sure.
People that nobody had ever had any idea that we're dealing with it have been set free. So there is freedom for you out there. Let me ask this as well. We're talking about obviously, man, we've talked about some pretty some stuff I don't even know that we really had any intention of getting into today, but that's kind of what happens on More Than a Conversation. But You mentioned something else in your story, and I want to take a turn here, but you mentioned the idea of homelessness. And I believe you said you were homeless in the San Francisco area, correct?
Yes.
So obviously right now we look out there and you hear the news and like right now, San Francisco, an area that's plagued with homelessness and so on and so forth. Let's get into, we've been in the weeds on one side. Let's get in the weeds on something else here. We might as well live in the weeds today. One of the issues that I struggle with the most is getting people who are your average, everyday Christian who have never, and let me say average, everyday Western Christian. When I say Western, I mean American, just who have never been in that situation, or they might sometimes, and what's crazy is sometimes they might even have a family member, might even be a son or daughter, but they have no way to connect. And I hear because they can't understand it, I hear some of the meanest, most vile, most anti-Christ-like rhetoric come out of people's mouths. And there were so many things that I didn't understand, and I started putting my hands on it. And maybe this is the answer for everybody. But when I came even to the city I'm in right now, I came to Rock Hill. We're a suburb of Charlotte. In fact, close enough to Charlotte right now. The Panthers are moving their facilities into our city. We're a neighborhood of Charlotte, but right across the border in South Carolina. And our city, though, we had this homeless issue, and I started dealing with homeless people in a way that I never had before. And so many things I thought I knew went out the window. Yeah, man, we got some addicts. We got some people that, and this city's a good city to be homeless in, if there is such a thing. We've had people tell us that. But the majority of people that are homeless don't want to be homeless. Let's be real. Most of them don't actually want to be homeless. Or it's in that situation. But when we have a warming shelter in the wintertime, I've had people, well, why would we want to do that? The lazy men, why are we going to but there's men that are showing up to our warming shelter with their work uniform on, where they came from work. They just don't have a place to go that night. We'd have 2 or 3 of them group up together and get their money together and go get an apartment together finally and start getting back on their feet. So it was just a different situation than what I thought. And I think a lot of it probably comes from having these conservative ideas and, just all the stuff that we equate with Christianity and evangelical Christianity. But you got your hands on this all the time. But how do the ministers out there and how do the Christians out there, there's more just everyday Christians listening to this than there are preachers and pastors. What do you say to us about our mindset and our view of the less fortunate, of people that are in those situations? How do the ministers go about helping our people understand the humanity that is out there, and that it's not just, bless God if they just went and got a job and did the American dream like I did. You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of asking it in a few different ways, and I don't really know how to nail it down. But I'm not a professional, but you are. So you help me out.
Wow. Here we go again. There's a couple of different statements I've made hundreds of times in the ministry. One of them is that if you're going to be a church in Western civilized culture in this era, we're talking Europe, America, Canada, Australia. If you're going to be a Western civilized church of any denomination, and you're not going to have an answer for addictions, and you're not going to have an answer for being divorced and remarried, you really need to close your doors and go away, because you're just making a mess for everybody else. You make it harder for the rest of us. You don't know anybody that doesn't have an addiction problem somewhere in their family and that doesn't have divorce and remarriage in their family. It doesn't exist in America anymore. So
right.
If you're a church looking for lost people, but you don't want to deal with those 2 categories, there's nobody left. I mean, who you looking to find, the needle in the haystack? You're just wasting your time. But, I say that to set this up. The other thing I say all the time is, if you're going to deal with homelessness, you're actually dealing with addictions. You cannot deal with homelessness in the United States of America ever again, probably, and not understand that what you're really dealing with is addictions. People look at homelessness in the two traditional ways that don't really apply anymore. Either, they had a hard luck, they got down on they lost their job, bills piled up, they got cut off notice after cut off notice, they got behind the rent, they had to move into their car, and then the car broke down. Just that, that kind of homelessness still does exist in the world, not in America. One in 1,000 maybe. The other thing is, man, they're just so lazy. They're just mooching off of the system. And I know a couple of guys like that, but I know 5,000 homeless people personally.
Mm-hmm.
And so that hardly exists anymore. What you got to understand about America is everything you need to not be homeless, our insane government will give you for free. That's where we are. Downtown Tulsa, you can rent an apartment. You get on a list and you jump through the hoops, and they're very minimal hoops, and you go somewhere and it's a waiting facility, and you stay there for a few months. You get an apartment. You can pay $39 a month. $39 a month for an apartment. Okay, while you're in that $39 a month apartment, you get a free cell phone. You get free food, hundreds of dollars of food stamps. You get free medical care. What does a human being need besides food, shelter, and health? And it's free. Our government's giving it to you for free. That's where we are in America. San Francisco right now, you go to the homelessness office, you prove that you're homeless by basically standing there saying you have nowhere to go and filling out an application and signing on the bottom, promising that you're homeless. They give you $400 cash every month in San Francisco for being homeless right now. $400 cash for being homeless, plus the medical care, plus the cell phone, plus there's no reason. There's one reason to be homeless in America anymore. And that's because something has such a hold of you that it won't let you follow rules, follow instructions. If I say, take this blue piece of paper, walk 1 block down here, give it to a lady named Sandra, and then go outside until Bill calls you, and then go in there and talk to Bill, and they'll give you whatever you need. If you don't have it in you to walk that block, to give that piece of paper to Sandra, and to stand there and wait for Bill, for something your body has to have to live, there's only 3 things that could be happening. You're devil possessed, you're mentally unstable in an extreme way, or you're so addicted to something that it won't let you follow instructions to keep you alive. There is some devil possession out there. There is some mental instability out there. More than 90% of homeless people in America are addicted to something: a man, a woman, a drug, a chemical, a lifestyle, a feeling, a something, so strongly that it won't let them. And that's what you get. You get this group of people where it starts threatening their life. So they get a job and they work a little while and they get a little money, but they're not unaddicted yet. So that money goes to the addiction. Or like you talked about, 2 or 3 or 4 guys, they get an apartment together. They're paying their bills. One of them's going to steal from the other for his fix. One of them's going to hurt the other and go to jail for his fix. It's eventually going to fall apart. Most of those guys you talk to, they've been in this cycle for several years. It didn't just all of a sudden happen, and then after a little while you help them get out, because dealing with homelessness in America is dealing with addictions. So if you're going to have a homeless outreach, a feeding program, a homeless shelter, we have all of those things in multiple states. You have to set it up in a way that you're drawing them in to bless them and help them, and you're going to deal with their addictions. Now, you asked a question in the middle of all of that about, what's the key to dealing with these people, or why should we be dealing with these people? In the Old Testament, God's ministry, if we can call it that, God's relationship was to the Jews. Cut and dry. I don't think anybody would question that. In the New Testament, when Jesus came, changed a lot of things, reinforced a lot of things, fulfilled a lot of things, he ended up with a ministry to a different group of people. And it's not the Jews. Jesus' ministry was not to the Jews. Jesus' ministry was for the church to a group of people, and that group of people is called the poor. Um, if you don't know anything, let's say you're raised on a deserted island and you get a Bible somehow, and that Bible is all you have, and you just have that Bible and nothing else. Nobody can teach you, talk to you. You don't have no TD Jakes tapes. You don't have nothing. You just have that Bible. And you read that Bible, read that Bible, read that Bible, read that Bible. You're going to come to the conclusion, very, very likely, that your entire life of ministry, if you ever have the opportunities, to the poor. Jesus put all kinds of people in the category of the poor in spirit, the widows, the fatherless, all of these different people he put in this category of the poor. And then he told the church, once he invented the church, that their ministry was to the poor. When you have a church, when you have a ministry, when you are a minister, and your primary focus isn't to the fatherless, the widows, the addicted, the homeless, the kotic, all of these people that he put in the category of the poor, then you have your own religion, not Christ's.
And I think that is so important for us to remember, that is the center scope of Christianity, of the Bible. And also something you said that I think we all need to remember, this idea of dealing with addictions. You said we're dealing with addictions, and then you clarified that. You said to a person, to a lifestyle, to a thing. It's not everybody you see out there it's not always a substance. It can be a person. It can be, I've dealt with men who you would get them on the right track, and every time they got a woman in their life, they would throw away every bit of progress to chase that woman, and then that one would blow up, and then they go. And women do the same thing with men. I've had them do that again and again and again. You try to get them going. So it can be that. It can be, again, it can be a lifestyle. It can be a group of friends. It can be anything. But ultimately, these are people that are obviously needing deliverance and freedom, and that is what that ministry is all about. I've got a lot of other things I want to talk to you about. We're going to have to do this again. I know you got a busy day coming up. I know that I've got a day ahead of me. I would love, though, to give people an opportunity to know where they can follow you, keep up with you, get your resources, support what you've got going on there. Can you just take a moment and give us a rundown of where people can follow after what's going on with you guys?
Sure. Thank you very much for the opportunity. On Facebook, Todd Sloggett is my personal page, but our primary page is Reverend D. Todd Sloggett, and that's just REVD Todd Sloggett. And Facebook is where we do a lot of our producing of ministry, connecting things together. Holiness Missions to America is one of our Facebook pages. We have a big podcast following that's coming on next, NEXT. We call it the Next Podcast on most platforms. On Facebook, it has a page that is called Next Bible Study. Everything hubs together at our website, HMA, as in Henry, Mary, Apple, HMAministries.com. Even there on HMAministries.com, you can even get a lot of the books and DVDs and stuff that we've been referring to today. We have the Todd Sloggett Show on Spreaker.com, Spreaker Radio. Those are probably enough to get you started.
So some good resources there, some places you can follow. Also, you're connected with Amazon, right? In their way to support you when shopping?
Yes, you can go to Amazon Smile, which is the fundraiser side of Amazon. You can buy anything on Amazon that you normally would buy. If you partner with us, Holiness Missions to America Incorporated, Sapulpa, Oklahoma, then every time you purchase, they will give a % of your purchase back to us. And Amazon's been really, really good to us. So has Facebook, Network for Good, PayPal, a lot of ways you can give to us that corporations have already partnered to make sure that that giving is very, very lucrative for the ministries.
Pastor Todd, we would love to have you come back on in the future and talk about some more of these things, maybe talk about some practical ways to implement some things, some ways that people can get involved, some of the stuff that's happening. I had a whole list of things I wanted to ask you about, but we've had a great conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me today.
God bless you, Pastor. Thank you for reaching out to us.
Thanks again for being part of More Than a Conversation today. If you'd like more content like this, check out my blog at www.pastorconley.com. That's PastorConley.com. Again, that's PastorConley.com. I'd also love to see you join us in worship at Garden Sanctuary. If you're ever in Rock Hill, South Carolina, or the greater Charlotte area, we'd love to have you stop by and worship with us. Check us out at www.gardensanctuary.org. That's gardensanctuary.org. Until next time, I hope this has been more than a conversation.